What does it actually take to conquer the world? Well, for one guy, Alexander of Macedon, it took a whole lot of ambition, some serious genius, and this unshakable belief that he was destined for it. So today we're going to dive into how this single leader, who we now know as the Great, completely redrew the map of the ancient world.
Just let that sink in for a second. By 30, an age when most of us are, still trying to figure things out, Alexander had already built this massive empire that stretched across continents. It's an absolutely incredible feat, and it really sets the stage for his amazing but really tragically short life.
So, how does somebody become the Great? Well, it doesn't just happen by accident, right? To really get who the conqueror was, we've got to go back and look at the prince and the really unique mix of people and ideas that shaped his mind from the very beginning.
You see, Alexander was shaped by these two really powerful and kind of competing forces. On one hand, you have his father, King Philip. From him, Alexander learned all the tough, practical stuff about military strategy and how to run a kingdom. But then, on the other hand, you have his mother, Olympias, and from her, he got something way more powerful, this deep, unwavering belief that he wasn't just a prince, he was destined for godlike greatness.
And get this, to shape all that raw ambition, his dad hired the single greatest mind of the era, the philosopher Aristotle. And we're not talking about just learning facts and figures here. No, Aristotle taught Alexander how to think, how to analyze, how to strategize, how to see the world not just for what it was, but for what it could be.
So, Aristotle's curriculum was the real deal. It gave Alexander this deep understanding of everything from science and geography to philosophy and literature. And that education, it gave him an intellectual edge that turned out to be just as powerful on the battlefield as any sword or spear.
Okay, so all of this training, all this potential, it was about to be put to the ultimate test. And it happened in, well, about the most dramatic way you could possibly imagine.
Everything changed in the year 336 BCE. King Philip was assassinated. And just like that, in an instant, a 20-year-old Alexander is on the throne. Now, for anyone else, that would be a total crisis. But for Alexander, this was the moment he had been preparing for his entire life.
And he did not mess around. While all his rivals saw was a kid and started plotting to take over, Alexander acted with honestly ruthless speed. He crushed every rebellion, secured his throne, and then immediately turned his attention to the prize his father had always dreamed of, the massive Persian Empire.
All right, this is where the story just becomes the stuff of legend. This is the moment Alexander the Prince becomes Alexander the Conqueror, launching a campaign that would literally change the face of the planet forever.
Think about this for a second. Napoleon, Caesar, Hannibal. Every legendary commander you can think of had some big losses. But Alexander, he never lost a single major battle. It's a record it's almost hard to believe. It tells you his strategic mind was on a completely different level than anyone else's.
So how in the world was that even possible? Well, it was this incredible combination of totally revolutionary strategy and just pure personal bravery. He'd use these unconventional tactics, like his famous cavalry wedge, that would just shatter enemy formations. And he wasn't some general sitting in a tent miles away, no way. He was right there in the thick of it, leading the charge himself, which earned him the absolute loyalty of every single soldier who fought beside him.
And the result of winning every single battle? You get an empire on a scale that was just mind-boggling for the time. This wasn't just some regional kingdom. It was a global power, a huge territory that connected Europe, Africa, and Asia, stretching all the way from Greece to the rivers of India.
But here's the thing that makes Alexander's story so powerful, even today. He wasn't just interested in conquering for the sake of it. He had a bigger vision for what would come after the fighting was over. He was actually trying to build a whole new world.
And that big vision has a name: Hellenism. And honestly, this is probably his most important and lasting legacy. He made it his mission to spread Greek culture, the art, the philosophy, the language, all throughout his new empire. And this created a cultural blend that would shape the world for centuries to come.
And he did this in some really smart, practical ways. For one, he founded a ton of new cities, dozens of them named Alexandria, you might have heard of one, and these became hubs of Greek culture. He also pushed for trade routes that would mix people and their ideas. And here's the really brilliant part. He didn't just try to erase local cultures. He blended Greek ideas with local traditions, creating something totally new and vibrant.
But an empire that's built so quickly, pretty much by one person,
Well, it's got to be fragile, right? So what happens to this giant, world-changing creation when its architect is suddenly out of the picture?
And that's really the central question hanging over his whole legacy. You've got this empire that spans 3 continents, all held together by the sheer force of one person's will. And then, all of a sudden, he's gone. With no clear plan for who takes over, well, the potential for absolute chaos is huge.
He conquered the known world, but he couldn't beat fate. At just 32 years old, Alexander died suddenly in Babylon. He left behind this massive empire, no designated heir, and the whole thing just shattered. His generals immediately started fighting each other, carving up the empire for themselves.
So when we ask why we remember him as the Great, the answer is, well, it's complicated. Yes, of course, he was a military genius who built one of the biggest empires ever, but it was more than that. He was a cultural force who spread Hellenism and forever changed how the East and West connected. He's just this timeless example of how one leader's vision can completely reshape the world. Ultimately, the story of Alexander is just this powerful reminder of the impact one individual can have. It shows how one person's ambition and vision can kick off events that just keep rippling through history long, long after they're gone.
And all of that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. What if he hadn't died at 32? What if he'd had another 30 years to strengthen his empire, maybe push even further east, and keep building this new culture? It really is one of history's greatest what-ifs.